Nashville. I own a company called Websites You Control. We set up what's called WordPress websites. That's a little bit of geeky stuff that makes websites work, and it's what I recommend you do for podcasts. But today is basically a podcast primer. If you don't know I'm going to assume you know nothing about podcasts other than the fact that you've heard of them. It's interesting how many people my age even go, what's a podcast? I don't even really know what it is. So we're going to talk about that. So number one, this is what we're going to learn today. I highly recommend if you're going to get a podcast, you get what's called a URL. That's those .com things. People like GoDaddy, they sell them all day long. But you want to have a dedicated podcast address. Ours is Pest Control Marketing Podcast. I have MikeStewartPodcast.com. And then you need WordPress hosting. And all of that stuff is dirt cheap. And I'm going to show you where you can get it. And you want to have what's called a dedicated WordPress website to control your content. I'm going to go into details exactly what that is. But all the big boys do that. Now there's other ways of doing it. Things like Anchor and Libsyn and Podbean. Those are all great sources. But the main thing is what you want to do is you want to be able to have this URL, have WordPress, and then you want to be able to know where to send your podcast to the directories. Directories are like iTunes. I'm going to tell you which ones are the best and which ones you need to know about. And then I have kind of a show formula. I call it my 80-20 rule of content. I make 80% of my show is killer content. Let's put it this way. You're never going to build an audience unless your content people want to listen to. So you make great content, but then 20% of the time you can shamelessly promote anything you want to. And that's how I make money with my podcast. And then, of course, a lot of people say, what software, what microphones? There are cell phone apps that you can get that are free that people, one of my buddies, Russell Brunson, has a multi-million-dollar podcast that he records on his way to his office with his iPhone. So it's not about equipment, it's about content. Then what are show notes, titles, and tags, and backlinks to build your audience? We'll talk about that. And then, of course, everybody says social media. Yeah, but what media are you making? Social media means content that people want to share socially. And podcasting is the only social media that you own. You don't own Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. You don't own those properties. But when you own your own domain name, you own your content, and that's your own social media. And then when you build a super fan audience, how can you make money with it? And the ways we make money with it is our own products, our own affiliates, if you don't know what affiliate marketing is, and listener support. We actually have podcasts that just say, if you love what we're doing, send us money through Patreon and a lot of different places. And then, of course, resources and links to the things like Audacity, voice record app, PodSafe production music. And the author is actually in the room, David Hooper's book. If you don't know about David Hooper's book, I'm going to tell you about that. And then, of course, mics and hardware. So all of this stuff I'm going to go over today so that you understand the foundation of podcasting. Now, why are podcasts like talk radio the world loves, but it isn't what radio is? Well, number one, podcasts are basically talk radio shows that fans love and want to hear more. Now, the big thing about a podcast content, you can use music, but if you don't own the rights to the music, you may have trouble. But when you're talking about subjects and it's stuff that people want to hear, just say something intelligent in that microphone, record it, and it lives on the internet forever. Here's another thing radio isn't. Podcasts are on demand and bingeable. If they find episode 50, they might go back and listen to all 50 of your episodes or all 100 of you. Radio is right now, it's over with, it dies, it's live broadcast. Podcast is online, on demand, and bingeable. Podcasts can be subscribed to in directories, and the user's devices will notify you when new shows are posted, power something called RSS. And here's what's great. Podcasts are popular on mobile phones, tablets, TV sets, now with home devices like the Alexa and Google, and now they just put Alexa in all the dashboards of all new cars. That means that people will be able to go to their car and say, Alexa, tune into the big podcast by David Hooper, and it'll start playing right where radio stations. We all know drive time is a huge part of radio. Podcasts generally only promote or advertise what their audience is interested in, or they can be ad-free. It's totally up to you. And they're indexed in Google, and they create traffic to websites, and they can be shared by fans. It's hard for radio to do that. And here's the beautiful part about podcasts. Everybody's welcome to get into the system if you're willing to create the content. So, how do you get a cheap podcast URL and cheap hosting? To me, a .com address is like your call letters. You know, in radio it was WNBC or KABC. Those are big call letters that are famous. Your web address is your call letters. And then WordPress is your antenna. That is the technology that you can get for pennies a month to be able to be a transmitter. So now you have call letters and a transmitter. The next thing you have to do, and this is the reason why I wanted to tell you about WordPress as a content management system. Some of the most successful podcasts in the world use self-hosted WordPress sites to build their shows, their show notes, and their monetization links. Now, WordPress is easy. It's supported everywhere. In fact, if you go to YouTube, there's thousands and thousands of tutorials on how to use WordPress. And all of your, Google loves search engine optimization created by WordPress and search engine plugins. So all your shows are indexed as search results in Google, which is a big plus. It builds what's called your RSS feed. And one of the things about WordPress is, can we shut this door? Because that is a little... I keep hearing that out there, and it's kind of a little distracting. Oh, well, if we can't do it, don't worry about it. Okay, great. So in other words, there's 40,000 free plugins or pieces of software and thousands of free themes. WordPress is one of the easiest ways to build a website. Now, there's other ways of doing a podcast with some of the podcast hosts like Podbean and Libsyn, and I'm a big fan of all those things, but most of the successful podcasts are using WordPress. And when you build your podcast on something you own rather than somebody else's system, then it'll never go away. There's a lot of people that built businesses around MySpace and Google Plus and Periscope, and those are all systems that were popular at one point, and now they're gone. So that's why I like owning my own URL and building on WordPress, because then I'll always do it. Now, professional hosting solutions, that's where you put your audio file. Places like Libsyn, Podbean, and Blueberry, they work seamlessly with WordPress. They give you the analytics, and there's something that's a huge opportunity for podcasters, which is called dynamic ad insertion. I'm so excited about that, is the fact that you can have 100 shows programmed in your website, and you can go back and make current advertising for yourself or for advertisers that are time-stamped or geo-stamped. We're talking to people in the music industry about it, saying that you can be able to go to all your subscribers and say, hey, I got a show coming up this weekend in Miami, and then it could have a different ad for somebody in New York, and it can be time-stamped. So it's dynamic ad insertion is a huge opportunity. And of course, if the big boys that make a lot of money podcasting use WordPress, you should too. These are the top podcast directories. I know there's a lot more, but these are the top 5 that I recommend everybody be in. Obviously, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and TuneIn. If you get into those, that's going to at least cover the majority of things. There's a lot more, but the big thing is TuneIn will get you in Alexa. You got to be on Apple. Stitcher is a huge directory, and of course, you can't argue that Google's not big. And of course, Spotify. That's a great place. The world's listening to music on Spotify. Anybody can get their podcast. Our pest control podcast is in Spotify.
Are these all free?
These are all free, yes.
And Spotify just bought 2 of the biggest.
Yeah. All right, so this is my podcast, which my good buddy David loves to laugh about, but it's true. It is using our 80-20 rule of content and self-promotion. We have the #1 pest control marketing podcast in the world just for pest control owners. That's who our audience is, and we use everything we can. We have a music intro. We have self-promotion every time we start the show. 15 to 20 minutes of killer content. There's no rules. That's just what we do. Our audience loves the content. Mid-roll, we have a 60-second ad for we're the only advertiser. And then we end with a shameless self-promotional tag at the end of every show. We use the same ending every time. Subscribe to us. Share us with your fellow pest control owners. Visit our links. Subscribe to our email. Buy our products and services. We do that over and over again. And ironically, you'll laugh at this, one of our biggest businesses this year has been writing jingles for pest control agencies that we record here in Nashville, and we sell the jingles. We've done about $20,000 worth of jingles in the last 60 days just to pest control owners off of this podcast. So, and my partner does about $100,000 a year in consulting to pest control agencies, all from just building relationships through our content. Now, if I told you how to get the antenna, that's the and the call letters. The call letters is the .com. WordPress is the antenna. Libsyn, Podbean, or Blueberry are the audio MP3 hosts. You got to get in front of a microphone and say something of value, audio of value. So how do you record for nothing? It'd be great if you could go. There's studios in this town that are amazing. They're all over everywhere. There are great studios, but maybe you don't have that. So on a shoestring budget, you can go on any computer and download Audacity, PC, or Mac recording software. I think, David, you use it for your professional podcast as Audacity, is that correct? Audacity, absolutely free. An amazing MP3 recording software called Audacity. All right, let's say you don't have a computer. On iPhone and Android is a great app called Record Voice. I love Record Voice app as opposed to the notes recording. And here's the reason why, is I can email from my phone, put it in Dropbox, I can do all kinds of things. So I hit a button, and now I'm recording my podcast. I could email that to myself to put on my show. And now I'm recording my podcast. That's how good that is. And now I'm recording my podcast. Okay, you can be quiet now. So anyway, the Record Voice app. There's hundreds of great microphones. But you can go to Amazon and get what you need. If you have Audacity, you should get a good USB microphone. There's lots of different brands. A lot of my clients are happy with the Yeti here. And it's, once again, search USB microphones. What's the one that you like, David?
ATR 2100 by Audio-Technica.
Okay. So, once again, if you can remember say it again, ATR?
ATR 2100.
ATR 2100, go to Amazon, you'll find that microphone. Now, let's talk about show notes. If you've never heard of John Lee Dumas, this is a colleague of ours, and he's probably one of the most successful podcasters making money. See, there's two kinds of podcasts. Ones you do is fun, and that's called a hobby. And me, I am somebody who likes to make money because I like to keep my girlish figure here. I like to eat good, and I like to play on the lake. So I like making money. So this is one of the most successful. So I studied what he does. He uses WordPress. He has Entrepreneurs on Fire podcast. And these are the sections that he does in WordPress. He has his show notes, basically just content on the page on his website. He has the title of the podcast. In fact, you're going to be speaking a whole lot more about titles, but don't title your shows to go in all the directories and in Google. Episode 2. I've seen people with podcasts, episode 1, episode 2. That doesn't tell anything. Great titles, big, long, keywords-rich titles are very, very important. Always have the ability on your WordPress site that people can subscribe to you. So you need your subscription opportunity, your subscription links, your show notes, but here's the main thing, backlinks to things that make you money. So you need to be thinking about, if I'm going to do a show, who's my audience, and what will they buy from me? It could be your music, if you're a musician, it could be your show, your tour, your merchandise. There's a lot of things. Always think, if you're going to make money, what are my fans, super fans, going to buy from me? So anyway, be conscious of show notes, titles, subscribe links, and then of course, go check out John Lee Dumas if you want to see somebody who makes a lot of money. Now, how many people have not heard of Gary Vaynerchuk? How many people have heard of Gary Vaynerchuk? Okay. Well, I'm a big fan of Gary. Gary is one of the top social media consultants in the world. And more importantly, if he does it, it's probably worth paying attention to. And of course, he has a thing called the content pyramid. And, boy, I just skipped ahead real fast there. Okay, and one of the things that he recommends, let me check on my time here too as well. Okay, I still got 15 minutes. Gary says in his content marketing opportunity, he says have one long form piece of content. And he says a daily vlog, a Q&A show, or a podcast. See, this is what's great about doing a podcast. If you make yourself get a great podcast, then you can use his strategy of distributing micro content. He calls it the pyramid of content. You build one long piece of content, and then you can break it up into images, quotes, stories, mashups, remixes, rants, gifs, and you can put that everywhere. Distribute that content all over social media. So one podcast can be the inspiration to a whole lot more stuff that links back and builds a big fan base. So doing what Gary says is real important to the success of audience building. Now, when you have a lot of listeners and you have a lot of fans, think about how you can make money. So refer fans back to things that make your money. Your products, your services. If you don't know what affiliate marketing that means, it means that you can get a tracking link to somebody else's product, and when they click that link and they buy it, you make money. I make a lot of money from referring products as an affiliate, or services, or coaches, or virtual merchandise. Places like Cafe Press, Teespring. We sell t-shirts through teespring.com. We don't have any inventory. We just put a logo up, make all kinds of t-shirts, and send those people from our podcast to the t-shirts. We actually had somebody in our podcast group talk about they just have a donation page. The Congressional Dish podcast is purely listener supported. She has a page it's brilliant. She takes even Bitcoin. I think it just takes money any way she can get it. That's awesome. If you never heard of Patreon, or just as simple as a PayPal donation button on your website. I have a band here in town, and we have an online tip jar that we send to people's cell phones, and we actually have people tip us from their phone because it's easier than going around with a bucket and begging for cash. So anyway, and then of course, if you can have thousands and thousands of listeners. I know there are some successful podcasts that they can show millions of downloads, and the average advertising support money you can get is around about $15 per 1,000 downloads is what I've heard. I don't know if that's incorrect or not, but even at that, to make any money, you got to have thousands and thousands of downloads. When you start a podcast, I remember when we were happy we had 20 downloads on the Pest Control Marketing Podcast. We thought, hey, at least it's 20 prospects. So the thing is that if you do get a huge podcast that has millions and millions of listeners, then you could go get an advertiser and they would pay you around that much money. But these other ways, like with our podcast, we don't even care about podcast. We don't even want advertisers. The only advertiser is the things I do. If it's a band, it's our gigs, it's our merchandise, it's whatever we're doing. If it's a business, it's our coaching services, it's our online referrals. There's all kinds of ways of making money. But you've got to build fans before you can worry about making money. So make great content, shamelessly promote yourself, and then more importantly, figure out what's called your back end. Now, I know you're not going to be able to write down all of these, so don't worry about taking pictures of these, because I got a little surprise for you here in a minute. But you can take pictures of it if you want to, but I'm going to show you how easy you're going to get all these links. But anyway, the free PC and Mac software, like I said, Audacity, those are the links for voice record for iPhone. Voice record works on Android. That enables you to record your sound. There, now I'm just teach you a little lesson. What do you think that link is right there?
Affiliate link.
It's an affiliate link. And I'm going to show you how fun it is to get it here in just a minute. Watching my time. I like to be on time. So anyway, the Blue Yeti, this book, in fact, we're honored to have the author, David Hooper, right here. If everybody doesn't get this book and read this book, you don't want a successful podcast. That's what an endorsement I have it. This is not about all this little geeky stuff that I've spent 20 minutes talking about, getting your antenna, getting WordPress, turning it on, getting a microphone, saying something intelligent in it, recording it, shamelessly promoting yourself, MikeStewartPodcast.com. Those are all things you've got to do, but this is chock full of everything to make a successful podcast. So, get this book. If you've never read Crush It by Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, great book. I've read it 3 times. The man is brilliant. No wonder he's the consultant to the music industry. People like Scott Bruschetta, who Taylor Swift, pretty successful in the music business. Gary V's his consultant. So the guy knows what he's doing. Worth reading. He's actually got a new version of this book, but it's good to read the old version. This is another friend of mine, shared the stage with me, Russell Brunson. It's all about what's called funnel sales. In other words, you need to get people in your funnel. That's the internet marketing way of saying you need to build a lot of fans and find people that want to buy from you. Everybody won't buy from you, but everybody's welcome in the funnel. Everybody's welcome to listen to your podcast. You need to find the people who support you with monetization. or it's a fun hobby. Now, if you want a hobby, forget all this money thing I'm talking about. But if you want to make money, build fans, and send them back to things. And .com Secrets is a great book to understand the concept of funnel sales. You need to use legal music. Okay, here's a shameless plug. I was in a band in 1982. We're a one-hit wonder. Let me tell you, one-hit wonders do not make a living. You get a gold record, and then a year later the money's out, and you go, ooh, that was 1983, so you got to go back to work. But anyway, the point is I am a composer, I'm a musician. I was in Atlanta for 40 years, and I moved to Nashville because I love being around the music industry. And I love helping and explaining to the baby boomer decision makers that the future of radio and the future of musicians and music is building fans through the technology of the internet. And what is radio on the internet? It's podcasting. And this is legal music. I have made a six-figure living selling my music to podcasters and YouTubers to be legal with their music. So, online video legal music, that's me, that's my video sales letter where people join and buy my music. Now, this is a product that David and I are working on. And I want to get a video right now of people engaging. How many people have a cell phone? Okay, what I want you to do right now, as I take this video, if everybody will pull out your cell phone right now and dial that number, I want you to dial, and please engage me, 615-205-7711. And when you dial that number, I will send you all the slides and all the links, plus Gary V's content model, my free blogging course. You'll get to hear the jingle that I wrote for my business. And now you know how to get in touch with me if you have any other questions. And that is using the power of WordPress. And in fact, at the bottom of the link that you see of the page will be a link to my podcast. So I just wanted to show you how easy it is to build fans into your funnel with something as easy as having people dial a phone number. Look at your text messages right now, and there's the slides for you. And learning to market yourself and creating great content is what's so important. So that's the basics of podcasts. I'm in the Nashville Podcasters. If you're here in Nashville, you need to come meet our group. Go to NashvillePodcasters.com. I am websitesyoucontrol.com. That is layman terms for WordPress semantic blogs built on a PHP server, which nobody wants, but everybody needs a website they control. And more importantly, I love Nashville, I love music, I love podcasters, and I may have a couple of minutes here left if you have any. I have 4 minutes left for questions. So anybody have any questions? I got through this in a half an hour.
Like, how long should a podcast be? I mean, like, is there a certain time that people shut it off, or it's too long?
I don't think there's a rule. I've seen people do 1 hour podcasts. I've seen people do half-hour podcasts. For my business, we figured that the majority of the markets that listen to us have a 15-minute to 20-minute commute.
Yeah.
So we generally figure 15 to 20 minutes tells the story that we want to tell. You get a great interview with somebody, it could go an hour.
Yeah.
So the beautiful part is it's not like radio. There's no rules. If it feels good, if it feels like that it's engaging, if it feels like it's great content, do what you feel. But I can tell you what, I can do 4 podcasts or I can do one 1 hour podcast. I'd rather have 4 episodes because it's the consistency of publishing. Here's what most people do. They spend too much time, it gets too hard, they do one show and they quit and they say it didn't work. It's going to be like, we used to talk, it's like pushing a boulder. You push on that boulder and it feels like it doesn't move. But if you just keep pushing and keep pushing, you'll feel it loosen up. And that's why consistently, I recommend a 15 to 20 minute podcast every week, even if no one's listening. Just never give up.
Every week?
That's a bare minimum. I know people that do it every day. I know people that do it, twice a week. I know people that do once a month.
So should every one be about one subject, or should you
mix it up?
Mix it up.
We have a Facebook page that's just for our audience, and say, what are your questions? And we never have to think of content.
Okay.
We had a guy say, what should I do about my truck graphics for my pest control truck?
Yeah.
We did a whole show on good pest control graphics for a truck. And they loved it.
Wrapping them and stuff.
You know, wrapping them and, you know, so what does your audience want to know? If you're a musician, how you wrote that song, the background, how to play the bass part. I mean, ask your audience what are your questions and answer the questions. And if you don't know the answer, do an interview with somebody that does know the answers. All right?
What band were you in?
Buckner Garcia. There's my good friend Jerry Buckner and Gary Garcia, and we had a hit called Pac-Man Fever. CBS said, we want you to do nothing but game songs, and radio said, we're not playing any more than dumb game songs. And career was over. So then we turned to Waffle House. So we did 30 years of Waffle House records. So go in the Waffle House, you'll see that Buckner Garcia did Raisin Toast, and we're getting a Waffle House Toonie Award this October, which is the equivalent of a Waffle House Grammy. It's an iron gold waffle iron. Can't wait.
Do you have a preference as far as when you put your content out there? Like in the middle of the night, morning, midday?
What we do, and there's no rules once again, we get together on Skype because my partner is in Atlanta. It's very easy to record Skype conversations. We record 4 podcasts on a Saturday morning, and I program them to drip every Sunday night. That's what I do. Here's the beautiful part. Whatever your audience loves. I don't think there's no rules.
Sure.
You know, I looked at John Lee Dumas. I think he does a weekly podcast. I think Pat Flynn does. What do you do, David? Weekly or monthly? Or you got so many shows, I don't even know what I'm...
At this point, it's kind of like a slot machine. Whenever it pays off, it pays off.
Anyway, the beautiful part is people start and give up. And here's the hard part. If your show sucks, nobody wants to admit your show sucks. But your audience will tell you what they don't like about it. So listen to them. Listen to your audience. You know, who cares if I don't like your show? Your show may not be for me. You know, there's Beatle podcasts out there that I love. But I don't listen to Rolling Stone podcasts. And I enjoyed listening to the Megadeth guys, but maybe I'll become a fan of theirs. I don't know. I mean, I was a Beatle guy. Helter Skelter, that's about as heavy metal as I get. Now, I don't want to take up, I got 2 minutes. I don't want to take any of my next guys. Yes, ma'am.
How many, obviously you have many different verticals going on. What's your size of your staff?
Me? I have scaled down to me because that's what I like. I like freedom. Russell Brunson and some of my colleagues have 400 and 500 employees. That's how big the opportunities are. I know the principles they worked. I'm retired, or am I? I don't know. I do what I want to do. You know, I could sit home and sit behind a computer and get fatter. At least if I could get out and meet people and talk to people, I remember there's people in the world, and I love being around people. So, but I don't want a whole lot of staff. I have virtual assistants. So, in other words, I don't want to hire people. I want to get, if I need a service, for instance, as an example, rev.com, rev.com. I can send an MP3 to them, and in 24 hours, for a penny a word, I have it typed up. So, Fiverr.com. I look for .coms to have services as needed, as opposed to having salaries or people to manage. I'm not a good manager. I hate firing people. So I just don't hire them. That way I don't have to ever fire them. All right. I got 1 minute. Any final questions? Did you enjoy that? Yeah. Great. Well, let's get hooked up for the next thing about titles. If you have questions, by looking at your text messages, at the bottom of the page that's from the text message link, you actually have my cell phone number, and I hope to hear from you if I can be of service anytime. But go start a podcast. There's no excuse. Get her done.